Hello and welcome to the Yellow Chair Collective. We are a psychotherapy practice based in Los Angeles. My name is Jack Lam, and I use they, them, and he, him pronouns. And I'm an outreach coordinator and therapist here at the Yellow Chair Collective. As the holiday seasons are coming up, we decided that it might be a good idea to explore communication in relationships during this time. Much has been said around interracial communications, and yet even within our Asian community, there can be many nuances and differences between the ways we view or even celebrate the holidays. Specifically, we've invited our panel of therapists who currently are in intercultural or interethnic relationships with partners of different Asian backgrounds to share with us their stories, as well as some tips for anyone who might be in intercultural relationships during the holiday season. So first we have Sujin Lee, who uses she, her pronouns. Sujin is a licensed marriage and family therapist, as well as the co-director here at Yellow Chair Collective. She is a 1.5 generation Korean American immigrant, and she provides therapy, consultation, and trainings on identity issues around Asian American identity, trauma, and work-life balance. Next, we have Aska Garcia, who uses she, her, hers pronouns. And Aska is a licensed clinical social worker, psychotherapist here at Yellow Chair Collective. Aska is a Japanese national and has experience working with adults and older adults with serious mental illnesses. Next, we have Samna Budatoki, who uses she, her, hers pronouns. Samna is an associate psychotherapist at Yellow Chair Collective. She was born and raised in Nepal and is currently living in Long Beach, California. Samna has experience and training working with trauma, depression, and anxiety amongst adults, teens, and couples. And last but not least, we have Jessie Lee, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. Jessie uses she, her pronouns and is a couples therapist and a clinical supervisor here at Yellow Chair. She enjoys working with couples and helping them navigate the journey of being partners. So we are very, very, very excited to have all of you here today. Maybe just to kick it off, I would like to invite some of y'all to kind of share your experiences with kind of communication during the holiday seasons, if there's any kind of salient experiences or what you kind of think of first when you think of intercultural communication during the holidays.
One of the things for me that's very prominent when it comes to holiday season and having my families get together is really about language barriers. So of course, cultural barriers, the traditional barriers, different ways that the family celebrate the holidays together is already difficult. But for me and my family in particular, there's a huge language barrier. So as Jack introduced, I am a Korean American, 1.5 generation, which means that I was born in Korea. And then I immigrated here when I was young. So my parents also are immigrants and they're monolingual in Korean. Whereas my husband, who is second born here in America and Chinese American, his family is also immigrants, though his parents are immigrants. And they speak, multiple different dialects of Chinese in the home. So he grew up with multiple different dialects of Chinese. But either way, when my in-laws and my family get together, they're kind of all speaking different languages, right? So it's so difficult for us to try to navigate that. I think it becomes a thing where my husband and I have to sit right in the center of the table so that my parents are on one side and his parents are on the other side, where we have to do this three-way translation, right? My parents say something and then I have to translate in English, and then my husband translates it to Chinese and then the other way around. So the communication becomes very short and it becomes even very just vague, right? And a lot of times we tend to skip over a lot of details or skip over a lot of things that my parents are even saying, because it becomes exhausting for me and my husband to constantly be the translator and center of the communication in the holidays.
When you say that, I think of the game of telephone that we
Yeah.
used to play as children, when the message keeps going to different people, and then at the end, it's something not even very close to what the original message was.
Yeah, I'm sure the way that they're interpreting it too is probably different.
Yes, I feel like I can really relate to what Sujin said. Just a little bit background information. I am Chinese, also 1.5 generation, and my husband is Korean and also 1.5. My parents are monolingual, and my in-laws speak some English. So whenever we have like gatherings around the holidays or birthdays, it's a lot of translating, like being in the middle, like relating the message and thinking like, do we need to do some filtering? Is it going through meanings and languages? So yeah, I can really relate to what Sujin was talking about.
I'm wondering, you mentioned filtering. Like, do we need to do some filtering? That makes me sound like there's something to filter. And I'm wondering if there's anything that you can think of, like an example of something that's happened that you feel like you need to filter from the other family.
I think the word filter might be a little bit, strong, but I'm just gonna give you like a little episode that happened around holidays or birthdays, and like parents from both sides would want to invite each other to come over, to just get together and have some fun time together. I think at the beginning when my parents were inviting my in-laws in, my husband and I were the ones who planned like what time they would come over. So it just whatever worked for our schedule. So it was 2 p.m., 3 p.m., whatever that worked. After a few times, my father-in-law told my husband, is it like a Chinese tradition thing that they don't feed their guests? Because we thought there would be like a meal or something. But then my wife and I would go over thinking there would be a meal, but we had to get in and out on our way home. I felt so bad, so embarrassed. After my husband told me about what his dad said. But for my family, I don't want to say it's a Chinese thing, but it's just my family's tradition is that we have very like set meal times: breakfast at 8, lunch at 12, dinner at 6. So whenever we have guests over, in between those times, we have like fruit, tea, or juice or snacks to serve the guests, but not like a meal. So my parents weren't, thinking about a meal when the invitation time is 2 o'clock. So that was kind of like a little bit like miscommunication. So after that, my husband and I have decided now all gatherings will be like 12 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So it works for, both sides. Yeah, I think this is just like a little episode that happened.
It's so funny. It reminds me of one time, this wasn't exactly like a language barrier, but I guess it's more like just the family cultural differences, right? I think like the first few times that my parents were meeting with my in-laws, they wanted to make sure that they looked their finest, right? Like, and it's like a very Korean thing, I think, to want to look your best when you're especially meeting with your daughter's in-laws. And so my dad would always put on a suit with a tie, and he never puts on a tie, right? But he, like, for these occasions when we would get together for dinner, and my mom would try to dress the best way that she can. But my in-laws just, having grown up here a lot longer than my parents who really grew up in Korea, because my in-law parents, they came here when they were a lot younger, like in their college or in their 20s. So to them, they've already adopted just like being casual, having casual dinners, like because it's like for lunch or not even for dinner. Sometimes we're just getting together for lunch and getting at each other's houses, not even outside. So then they're just in their casual clothes, and sometimes my sister-in-law is coming in with her sweats, and my parents are all dressed up and nervous about meeting with my in-laws. And I just remember and found that to be like a little bit hilarious, but also, I felt like really warm in my heart that there's such difference, but they're all both trying together to like make this dinner or lunch happen, right? Even though it's so difficult for them.
I think that's hilarious because I'm just picturing, eating lunch outside and then seeing this two families merge, and one being like American Eagle, Hollister, and then the other one just in full suit. Oh
Exactly.
my gosh.
Yeah, it was really funny. Yeah, because my parents also, like, they were like, oh yeah, we have to get there early, so they were like 10 minutes early, and then you see them like waiting with their dress and the suit, and my sister-in-law, I think, was the next person that came with her sweats, and she's like, I think I'm really underdressed for this.
Oh, that's funny. In those instances, did you ever hear from your parents how they felt about seeing your in-laws dressed so casually?
My mom was saying, "Oh, I think she was trying to process really like the different cultural things because she was experiencing already a lot of that here as an immigrant too, like that they're really different." And so I think she was really processing that even in family gatherings, she's really feeling that difference too. So yeah, she noted like to me, it's like important that we look our best for your new family members, right? But I guess that might make them feel maybe even more uncomfortable that we're looking too formal. So yeah, she did make that comment.
That brings up what we are kind of moving into next, which is kind of the adjustment, right, of moving into a different culture. And especially around the holiday seasons, I think we think a lot about how do we kind of celebrate and keep our traditions alive in a whole new space, right? Where you might be accustomed to do things a certain way, like maybe your mom was, and then seeing that the culture around you might not have the same ideas or sentiments. So I'm wondering if y'all kind of have had that experience during the holidays where you feel like maybe, oh, this is something that you used to do, or this is something that you used to celebrate, and all of a sudden here you feel like things might have had to change or negotiated.
Yeah, so I am originally from Japan. So in Japan, in terms of holiday, we celebrate New Year's a more compared to Christmas time. And then in the States, we celebrate Christmas a lot more as official, in a sense, kind of religious holiday compared to New Year. So yeah, I kind of had the adjustment that, okay, a holiday, a Christmas is also something that we value. So I mean, I'm already used to it. I'm almost here in the States 20 years, but when I came here, that cultural shift was a little bit foreign to me, even more so that my husband is Filipino American, born and raised here in the States. They participate in Catholic religious ritual for Christmas. Definitely that was new tradition that I adapted. And then now I appreciate it because then now that adds a lot more value for the concept of Christmas to me. And then also for New Year, then I can also invite my husband to celebrate more in the Japanese way. So in a sense, I guess it's working out. But yeah, when I came here for the first time in the States, that was cultural shift.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. It sounds like you brought something for your husband's family and tradition, and he brought something for you to learn, and both of y'all are sharing and appreciating each other's celebrations. I'm kind of curious, even just the Japanese New Year, right? Like, what does that look like? Because I know that we do have some New Year celebrations in the US, but I'm wondering, how different does it look?
Yeah, it kind of starts from the New Year's Eve, actually. So our tradition is to eat soba noodle at the very end of the year, almost close to the 12 o'clock to go turn into New Year. And then that noodle, because it's long noodle, it represents longevity. So that's, yeah, we eat, which in my family, my actually dad had the noodle allergy. So I know we never got to eat soba, which when I was in my childhood, I wanted to try soba because I just couldn't have it. But we switched it with udon noodle or other. Still, yeah, did something similar. And then for New Year, we eat a lot in Japan, I guess. For New Year, I realized. So New Year morning, then we eat osechi ryori, which is the special bento box, huge one with kind of gorgeous dishes. And then afternoon, I mean, we go to the temple visit to wish for good year. And after come back, we eat mochi soup yeah. And we kind of continue to eat that bento box too because it's so much that we couldn't finish. So Yeah, we kind of just eat through and then bond together with family through eating and then resting and then eating and resting. So, and yeah, we celebrate New Year's for 3 days straight. So yeah, most of us have time off at least 3 days,
Asuka, can I join your family for New Year's?
right?
It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think it's so funny because, ever since I immigrated to America, I'm an immigrant as well from Malaysia. And I think the New Year's traditions here is kind of interesting, quite funny. I think a lot of people, talk about like the ball drop in New York, watching TV and having parties or going out to celebrate. Right? And that's something that was very interesting to me because I always feel similarly that New Year's was like a family tradition, right, that you spend with your family. But more so, we usually celebrate kind of Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, as opposed to the Gregorian calendar New Year. Yeah, also a lot of food, also the same meaning for noodles, which is very interesting to hear. But I guess I'm thinking, when you immigrated here over 20 years ago, and even just thinking about the fact that your New Year's lasts 3 days, and here it's just the day off. I wonder if that kind of brought you any feelings of like, grief or any feelings of sadness, loneliness. I think about my own experience immigrating here, especially around the holidays that I used to celebrate with my family. That definitely came up a lot for me.
Yeah, I definitely feel a sense of maybe, yeah, like just celebrating one day is too short. And then like usually we just kind of stay up late from the New Year's Eve to New Year, and then we try to stay up as long as possible, but we go to bed, and then on the first day of January, then the rest of the day it's kind of nothing. Like, okay, that was it, just to celebrate the New Year's Eve to New Year's. So yeah, definitely that sense, I kind of feel like, okay, this is it and not enough.
Oh,
But yeah, I actually try to, I mean, I am not best cook to be able to prepare all those special bento box and stuff. I don't have the skill, but when I have chance, then I at least try to cook the mochi soup or some of the few traditional dishes that we eat for New Year's, even maybe one or two dishes, and then share with my husband and family here. At least in that way, I feel that cultural connection and a sense of sharing that part with my new family.
I resonate with you a lot, Aska, and the words that you were bringing up, Jack, the sadness and grief, is I was actually feeling it while you were talking about your family gathering, Sujin, that your parents dressing up and then going into the holidays. I've always wished that for my family to be here. So again, coming from Nepal, so my family, they're back in Nepal, and half of them are in Japan, so definitely resonate with the New Year tradition there as well. But as we're speaking about it, we're actually having a big festival in Nepal. Most people here know it as Diwali, but today is the day of Diwali. But again, for us, we call it Tihar. So it goes with the Hindu tradition. Our biggest holiday is Dasai, as most people know it, like in India and other Hindu countries could call it Dashera, but we call it Dasai. And then Tihar is what we call, but then most people know it as Diwali. And it's a month long, of course, there's like 10 days gap, but Dasai is going to be 10 days of celebration. And Tihar is 5 days of celebration where we worship crows, we worship dogs. Today is going to be worshiping a cow, which for us is a symbol of goddess of prosperity and, Lakshmi. So we have these specific days where we worship different gods and goddesses, a representation of that. But as we speak, it's a normal day, it's a regular day. I'm here by myself, so unless I don't educate or share these experiences with my partner, then it's not like it doesn't exist for me. So that feels lonely in a sense, but isolating in some other sense. But also, it's like it's all dependent on me. And it's either I call my family and talk to them or wish them through that. But otherwise, there's no one around me to keep that tradition. So it gets a little hard at times. So yesterday I came home and it's like, well, with the time difference, the date here today is there yesterday, so their main day was already celebrated there. So I came home after work and just shared that today is Diwali at home, and we watched the Office episode on Diwali. And that's sometimes, even those littlest thing could be celebration, that's Diwali celebration here. So that's where we're at.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. Just the I never thought The Office would be like a cultural touch point for celebrating Asian holidays.
Seriously. It's an ironic version of it, but it still speaks to my heart, or it feels like some form of celebration to laugh and come together and eat while watching that.
I definitely resonate with that a lot. I remember the first few years that I was here during our major holidays back home, really trying to kind of time it out so that I can make that call to my parents, because the times where we're all awake are so slim. I remember after a call, it would be like midday here, right? And I'd be like, okay, well, what do I do now? I don't really know what else to do, because we kind of celebrated in that 15-minute phone call. And then usually the environment around me is still celebratory, but now it's just me and I don't really know what to do with myself, or I don't really know where to go, because as you said, it's a regular day. Happy Tihar, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So thinking about, with your partner, what background is your partner from and what does he celebrate?
He is biracial, I would say, Japanese and African American. It's interesting. Well, he celebrates Christmas and Thanksgiving, but we've kind of come together and made our own tradition with that as well. So it's not a big family gathering that we have. It's just him and his mom, and it's usually just the three of us in the holidays. And I would maybe acknowledge that too. For some of us, we've also lost loved ones. So for me, I've lost my host mother, who was my connection to the Japan side. So oftentimes now that becomes morning time, we go visit her grave and have a picnic there. And then evening we come and we cook with the traditional food. That's something I don't quite connect here. So then now we've kind of created our own menu where we cook the food that we all like and enjoy. That has a special meaning to it. So that's how we've kind of made our own little tradition. And afterwards we'll watch a little movie, just the three of us. It's more of an intimate, cozy setting that we've created. And after that, I usually FaceTime or video chat with my family.
I love that you've kind of created your own tradition in a way, right? Like what you practice with your partner and his mom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always interested in food, so I'm gonna ask, what that menu is that you mentioned.
Yeah. So my partner, he cooks really good lamb. And the closest to mutton, what we call in Nepal, which is goat, is lamb here. So he creates a really good lamb plate, and I make like a cauliflower soup plate. And his mom, being Japanese, she makes a sukiyaki bowl. So she brings that. So it's almost like we each bring our own touch to it. Sometimes if I'm in it, usually Nepali food takes a little longer for me to cook. So sometimes I'll add that into the menu. But usually those three things are staples. So the lamb chops, cauliflower soup, and sukiyaki from his mom's side.
I'm getting hungry.
Sounds so good.
I love that. I think that's so funny because, I think when my family first kind of started getting together for Thanksgiving, because we had never celebrated Thanksgiving back in Malaysia, because, it is an American thing, but, we celebrate by kind of coming together, right? Just as a family to eat. That's the way that we know how to celebrate like general holidays is around food. And I remember Thanksgiving, we would make turkey the first year, and then we thought, oh, this is okay. This is not very good. I don't know if it's because we don't know how to make turkey or if it's just very dry. So following years, we'd start making like Malaysian food, we'd start making Chinese food, and then we expanded it. So it's not just family. We would have neighbors come over, we would have other friends who are immigrants come over, and it'd be like a potluck, right? And that I feel like that's very common for Asian celebrations, is to have a potluck and people just bring whatever food that they like. And it becomes this new celebration. And that's what we do every year now during Thanksgiving, is any friends that, might don't not have a place to go back to, or might want to celebrate, or just have a place to kind of be with people on that day. My sister usually invites all of us back to her home, and then we kind of cook together, we watch a movie and play some games. So that's interesting. I mean, I think it's beautiful how we kind of create our new customs and our new traditions as we adjust to the environment.
I love that so much, Jack. I think I resonate with so much of all what you all are talking about here with food. Like brings people together. I think there's a part of me growing up in being that 1.5 generation immigrant that have always wanted to participate in this American tradition, right? You keep talking about it at school, elementary school, like the whole month of November, everyone's making hand turkeys, but I've never tasted turkey or I've never even seen turkey in my life. So what is this weird animal that we're supposed to be eating during this time that my parents have no idea about, right? And I remember just like begging my mom, like, can we please get turkey? Because everyone has turkey during this time, but I don't get to talk about it, right? And cranberry, which really was not familiar for my parents. And I remember then one time, like my mom bought us like the roasted chicken instead of turkey. So, and I was so sad. I was so mad at her. Remember, this isn't turkey. Like everyone else gets to have turkey, but we have to have chicken because you don't know turkey. And all that grief and I think sadness is kind of arising for me too. But as an adult, I remember like trying turkey for the first time. Same thing, Jack, and I thought, yeah, no, I think I'll stick with the chicken.
Yes, I feel like yeah, I can relate to Sujin and Jack talking about the turkey, being a little bit dry because I have never had turkey before coming to America. And like yeah, the first time I had it, it was not, the thing like the best thing. So now I think we have like our little own new tradition. We get turkey from this Cantonese plate that do roasted duck, and then they do roasted turkey, and it's great.
I never even thought about that, roasting turkey the way we roast duck. Okay, great idea. Wow. I think there's a sense of loss and grief for the ways we used to celebrate, but I think it's also so interesting to see the innovation and like the creativity, I guess, of blending these things and creating such new traditions and such interesting ways to go about it. I kind of want to try roast turkey in that way, right? Like the Cantonese style roast turkey. uh, but yeah, I think that's definitely something that I wonder, if it's a prevalent feeling for a lot, because I hear that there's a lot of resonating around like the grief, the loneliness, the isolation, or feeling left out, because maybe what we celebrate is outside of the dominant culture or the dominant norm here in the US. I wonder if y'all have kind of explored that with your partners or your family and how you've navigated that.
I think for our family, particularly for me, my current family, our closest family is my partner's family living in the States, because all of my families are in Japan. And yeah, for my family, meaning that my family with my husband's family is kind of very casual, small way when it comes to celebrating holidays. His family are also spread around, so holiday and get together, meaning that usually it is us and also his sister's family. So it is very small, very casual. And then we sometimes don't have those called traditional food either, but we just rather pick like a favorite restaurant, and then the intention is to spend the quality time together. So yeah, we kind of try to enjoy that moment of the gathering by talking each other, catching up with each other, because we don't get to see each other so often. So even if we may not have that formality, we try to appreciate each other's time by gathering and then laughing each other, joking around, and then playing games together and gift exchange. So we kind of created our own meaning to it around the holiday.
I think that's beautiful. I think the thing that comes up for me right now is thinking about how food is such a big part, right? I heard Asuka, you're like, oh, I can't make the osechi ryori and samana. Sometimes I make Nepali food, but it's too much work. So maybe not all the time. And I resonate with that too. I try making Malaysian food, but there's also, it's hard to access all the ingredients here. Sometimes it's a long drive and sometimes it's just not accessible at all. Like it's not there. It's also different. Sometimes you just want to go out and buy the food because someone in the neighborhood, like back home, that used to make it really well. And that's where everyone used to go and everyone used to get their New Year's food or their, celebration food. I'm thinking about the community, right? Like that's lost, that kind of connection. I'm wondering, do you all have any stories, I guess, about how you have found that connection again here in the States? And maybe especially because your partners might be from a different cultural background. I feel like that adds a layer of like how you kind of go about it.
I can share one since it's so recent. And this happens on a yearly basis, at least. So because we just had Dasai, right? Like mid-October was our Dasai time. And this year, for some reason, it hit me even harder because I was seeing photos of my dad celebrating with like my cousins, and I wanted to be there. Like, why can't I be there? So I think this year it hit me a little hard in terms of like feeling sad, missing home. So I, over the years, have learned to actually talk about these things with my partner, to let him know that what's happening internally for me. And oftentimes he'll try really hard. So this year he was like, let's go to Little India, which is Artesia area, and let's go get something to eat or just be around people who would remind me of home or would just be slightly closer to that. So I think one of the weekends we drove to Little India, we went to go eat dosa. And for him, it's always an interesting one. He says he feels out of place, and honestly, I feel out of place too at times, but we go and we check out the stores and, we eat the food, and somehow food, I really, again, resonate with everybody who was talking about it. Food just takes you back to those moments, or you relive those moments, and you feel at home when you eat the spices or the taste of it, or who did you eat that food with, back home. So I think that becomes special. But had it not been like me talking about how I felt, probably would have never taken that trip to Little India. It would have just been a normal weekend and we just keep doing our normal things. And I think reaching out and actually taking that one extra step to feel closer to the community has helped for me.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful because I resonate so much with that. I sometimes love going back to, like Malaysian, and the closest thing we have is Indonesian food because there's not much Malaysian restaurants here. And I just like, even sometimes just going and having it, even though it's different, I noticed that I like talking about how different it is. I like telling my friends or like my people close to me that like, oh, back home, like, we wouldn't use this, we would have this, it would taste this way. And even that just makes me feel nostalgic. It makes me feel comforted because at least I feel like in my element in a certain way. So I think that's a beautiful story.
Absolutely. The nostalgic word is at point.
That reminds me of, I guess, the way that my family and my in-laws family have now adapted to being together through the holidays, since it's so different the way that they celebrate it and we celebrate it back home. Is I think we've decided that we're gonna do kind of like the potluck style, right? Where everyone can bring what they want. And my parents will definitely bring some traditional Korean dish, while my in-laws will bring some traditional, like their regional Chinese food. And just like Jack, what you have mentioned, I think now all the conversations circulate around food. They get to talk about how it used to be back home for them and what kind of ingredients are supposed to be in here that is missing because we're in this new place together, right? And I think that really brings them together, although there's still this translation that happens. But food really is binding, my family and his family together.
I love that. I love the conversations around food because sometimes it's like, wait, is this yam or is that yam? But no, that's Japanese yam. No, actually that's Chinese yam. And I'm like, I don't know what the difference is. It's all yam to me. But as we're coming to a close, I want to make sure that kind of the people listening or watching, have some kind of like a takeaway. So thinking about the stories that you've shared today, and if people resonated with that, what is one tip that you would like to share with them?
For my experience being in a intercultural relationship, I think it is a continuous learning process, navigating the differences and similarities between the two cultures, the two families, on top of, having to figure out how to be in a relationship with my husband, like a healthy one. So it's a lot of work in there. But then at the end of the day, when we all sit down to eat, to laugh, and it's just full of love, full of joy. And I think, yeah, that's what will make the challenges a little bit easier.
Yes, I agree, Jessie. Regardless of formality or the structure that we supposed to have, even if we don't have it, we can still kind of create our own meaning to that space of gathering. I mean, especially for me, I do not get to celebrate my traditional holiday in Japan, but in the States, even if so, I still have my family with my husband's family. And through that gathering, I always feel that they try to enjoy each other. Like that is their intention. I do really feel it. So even if we may not have so much like we expect, like the food and whatnot, but still, yeah, we just try to enjoy each other and then, appreciate that moment. And that's what I like about the gathering here in the States with my husband's family. So yeah, we can still come up with our own intention and meaning, and then we can still celebrate in our own ways.
I think for us, I guess with couples that might be dealing with what I do with the different language barriers, the one thing that we found to be really, really helpful for my husband and I is having some kind of nonverbal activity as part of our tradition. That way there's something that they can really relate to together and build something off of, but it doesn't have to involve us in it continuously. So one of the things that we do now is play Jenga, because it's like you really don't have to talk, but we can all laugh, and we can all play this one game together. That's one. It's become a tradition for us.
I love that, Sujin. I think mine would be a little redundant because I already shared with the story of going to Little India. Would be to, I think, just like thinking of antidote to grief, loss, isolation. The opposite would be to reach out, to connect, to let others know what you're feeling or what you're going through, and to find that connection through existing relationships here. And now with technology, we can always reach out, FaceTime, it just feels like you're with them in some way, even though you're not. So it would be to reach out and to connect and find these little moments.
I love that. Thank you all so much for sharing. I definitely also resonate with a lot of it. I think with my family, we generally do a lot of karaoke around the holidays because, as I said, we bring a lot of people from different backgrounds, and sometimes, there's not much similarity, but I feel like you can sing any song in any language and it'll be fun, So that's kind of what we found as a workaround. But I want to thank you all so much for being here and sharing your stories. And we hope that, to anyone listening and viewing, that this has been helpful, that you have a great holiday season ahead, whatever that looks like for you. If you want more information about our practice, you can go to our website, yellowchaircollective.com, where you can find the profiles of all of these amazing therapists that have shared their stories here today. And feel free to follow us on our Instagram page at Yellow Chair Collective, as well as follow this podcast either on YouTube, Spotify, or Google Podcasts. We're still working on Apple Podcasts, so that might come in the future. But thank you so much and have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you all.